Good afternoon. Thank you very much for coming to this. I truly appreciate the fact that you are here because we really want to get out information that relates specifically to the event that occurred last week and give as much clarifying, factual information and details as possible. Before I get started again, my name is Todd Chamberlain. I'm Chief of Police for the City of Aurora. I would like to say first off, we are deeply in regret of any loss of life in our community at any level. And again, the one thing that we want to really make sure that everyone realizes that our thoughts and our hopes and our ideas are with the affected in this tragedy, and I mean all of them. I mean the suspect involved, the officers involved, the family members involved, and also the community who unfortunately had to witness this event. So again, we really hold that close to us. I'd also like to give some very specific details and related to this incident and how it occurred and what occurred. The one thing I'm going to do is refer to these charts that you see behind me, and I hope that brings some clarity and some understanding. As I mentioned out on the scene that day and during that event, Aurora Police Department received information at exactly 1:55 p.m. that there was a call of a fight in a parking lot across the street from where the actual incident occurred. At 2:08 p.m., that person reporting called back to tell Aurora 911 that the man now had a weapon and it looked like an AR gun. Caller said he pointed the weapon at another male that he was fighting with. To give you a little background of this, what exactly occurred was this fight involved our suspect and our victim, and the fight was over the victim's car, which the suspect was attempting to take. It actually got to the point to where they rolled around on the ground for a period of time, almost 5 minutes, when this call went out. It escalated to the point to where our suspect was trying to get the keys to our victim's car. It escalated even further, at which point our suspect took a rock and hit our victim in the head. After both of them fought for almost 5 minutes or more, the suspect left, went across the street, went into a van that he had parked at that apartment complex that you'll see right here, and he removed that weapon that was described. The original caller said, when they called, they said, hey, it looks like he has an M16. And the reporter, or our dispatch, said, so you mean an AR-15 type weapon? And she said, that's correct, an AR-15. So it originally started out as an M16 type weapon, and then it transitioned into the AR type gun that we now have listed up on the board. Caller saw multiple people, said it was described as a long gun. So again, we have a very long gun, and that's what I wanted to demonstrate over here to your left. You see the actual suspect's weapon, and this is a tactical air rifle, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. And then this is an authentic AR-15. At 2:10, APD was dispatched based upon those community concerns and those community calls. And again, I want to make sure that everyone understands this was not a one-person call. You had multiple community members who were reaching out, who were trying to get law enforcement to step forward on an incident that was ongoing and unfolding. At 2:11, another person calls Aurora saying the man has an AR-15 in his hand and is waving it around. At 2:12, our officers get on scene, and when they get on scene, what they observed is pretty much what you see on this poster. They observe an individual in the described clothing that was listed by our persons reporting, in a black hoodie, walking around in this intersection or in this area of the apartment complex where a lot of people were at, and he was waving it, brandishing it, in a very hostile and threatening manner. Our officers arrived on scene. They attempted to communicate with them verbally. Several times they stated, please drop the weapon, drop the weapon. The suspect's response to this de-escalation and this verbal command was to raise the weapon towards the officers. It's incredibly unfortunate that the officers were put in this situation by the aggressive and proactive nature and stance of the suspect. But in any case, our officers responded. They fired a number of rounds, approximately 2 rounds, and the suspect dropped to the ground. The officers immediately made contact with the suspect. They began to start medical treatment on the suspect, as well as take the weapon which was laying there and just make sure that it was in a safe area, in a safe place. The one thing I wanted to add to this conversation as well, that as the suspect, sometime in the area between 2:08, 2:09, 2:10, there was a female Hispanic who was walking with a cart. She was somewhere in the area right over here next to the complex. Our suspect, in very much the same posture, approached that female got in a tussle with the cart that she was pushing and actually made the statement that he was going to kill her. So again, when you look at the dynamics of this situation, when you look at the actions of the suspect, the response by our officers were the least amount of force necessary to control an incredibly fluid, unfolding situation. Once the suspect was placed on the ground, medical treatment, as I said, was given to him, and then he was transported to the hospital for additional care. As you all know, he subsequently expired. The officers have been placed on administrative leave. The investigation is still ongoing, and so we are, again, still trying to determine all of the facts, all of the issues related to this. And as this investigation continues to unfold, I'll be supplying you with as much information as I possibly can to give you the details on what we are going through, what the officers are going through, and what the investigation is going to unfold. So with that, I'd like to pass it off for any questions, anything anybody has.
You talked about raising the weapon toward the officers. Did the individual fire or attempt make a sort of threatening sort of gesture toward the officers?
There was definitely a gesture towards the officers. Again, there is video, there's body-worn video. There's video that was captured from closed-circuit TV. There was ring video that was captured. And all of it kind of tells the story right here in this picture. For whatever reason, for whatever this individual was thinking, again, I don't know. But what the officers saw, what the officers responded to, was exactly what you see on this picture. That was a man brandishing an assault weapon or an assault-type weapon, and the officers responded to that. What they saw when they arrived on scene, based upon the initial investigation, is exactly what you see in that photo. An individual who refused to listen to verbal commands to drop the weapon, and I honestly wish he would have. I wish he would have made a different decision that day, and for whatever reason, that decision didn't occur. So when our officers, excuse me, when our officers responded, they had to respond to what they had, and that's what they had.
Was there any known relationship between the two men involved?
From what we have right now, and I apologize about my voice, I don't know where it went. I'm going to grab a water here before we keep going, if you don't mind. Thank you very much. Thank you. From what we know now, again, there is no relationship. All we know from the initial investigation is that the two individuals met at some point. The fight occurred somewhere near this child recovery center in the parking lot. It escalated at that point. All the information was detailed by the individuals who gave that information, who supplied it to our 911 response center. And again, that's what we know at this point. It didn't appear to be any relationship. There doesn't appear to be any long-term friendship or long-term partnership or any type of contact other than what occurred that day during that period of time. And if that changes, I'll be sure to let you know and get that information out.
Chief, you explained how dynamic the situation was. In your opinion, was there any other de-escalation officers could have done other than the verbal commands?
And again, when you look at the severity of this incident, I think that's what's really important here, is you look at the severity of this. Had this been an individual who had put himself in a different position, had this been an individual who immediately dropped the weapon, put up his hands, or an individual who kept the weapon down at a low-ready position, but that's not what the officers responded to. What the officers responded to was a very dynamic situation that was detailed out to them by numerous community members who observed the same exact thing. The officers, when they got on scene, observed the same exact thing. So that ability to make that split-second decision based upon the threat that they perceived at that time is exactly what they did. The mere fact that they actually verbalized and used the de-escalation of verbalization as they approached the individual on open cover when you're dealing with somebody who may potentially have an automatic weapon, that speaks volumes about what actions the officers did. And again, I stress this completely. I stress it not only on behalf of myself, but I'm sure on behalf of the officers. I'm sure they wish they would have had another alternative. I'm sure they wish that this suspect would have made another decision. But for whatever reason, and I can't detail why, I don't know what was going through that individual's head at that time, that individual made a very conscious decision to take a very dynamic, life-threatening, what appeared to be a life-threatening situation, and escalate it even higher once the officers got on scene. And I know that a question, and a lot of people are going to think about, well, would this have been an opportunity for crisis response teams or mental intervention or health intervention? Again, when you look at the policies, when you look at the procedures, when you look at the dynamics for that type of response by crisis response teams, it does not fall into this category. It falls on the category of somebody who is despondent, somebody who is depressed, somebody who needs help or medical assistance or needs some type of mental intervention. That is not this incident. This incident is an incident that unfolded. It was a violent incident from the very beginning that Aurora PD became aware of it. It started out as a robbery and a fight. It escalated to where now this individual armed himself with what appeared to be an AR weapon, walked up and down the street, completely putting the community at jeopardy, threatening another individual, an elderly female who was pushing a cart. When the officers arrived on scene, again, I guarantee you they wish that there would have been another alternative. But that alternative wasn't dictated by the officers. That alternative was dictated by the suspect involved in this. And his actions dictated the end result.
Can a tactical air rifle be considered a toy gun?
Well, again, I don't know. What I know that this is not, when people think of an air gun or they think of a BB gun, again, when you look at this weapon, I don't know what you would consider that. I don't know how many people have children when you think of what a toy gun is. I don't know how many people have children, young children, that would give a young child a weapon that looks like this. I don't know what the purpose of this. Maybe it's target practice with pellets, BBs. I don't know. But what I do know and what I can see on this picture is that replica of a tactical air rifle looks exactly the same as an authentic AR-15. And when those officers arrived, they weren't dealing with minutes, they weren't dealing with hours, they were dealing with seconds. And unfortunately, our suspect, he did have time to consider those aspects. And I think he knew why he was there with this weapon. He was there to intimidate, to terrorize, and to threaten that community. And he had already committed a violent crime of robbery. And so now he made that other choice that he's going to take this weapon, which is almost an exact replica of a real AR-15, and unfortunately put officers in a situation where they have to make a split-second decision.
How many officers are on administrative leave as of right now?
Right now, there's two. The two that were actually went on location and then were involved in this.
As the new chief, what do you think, whether it's department-wide or community members, how do we cut down on these deadly interactions between Aurora Police and community members?
And unfortunately, so much of this is the responsibility of the individuals involved. And I mean the individuals involved as this gentleman. If Aurora PD could drive around and handle traffic calls, if they could drive around and handle family disputes, if they could drive around and make the streets safer, that's exactly what they want to do. There is no Aurora police officer that wants to get involved in a deadly force, life-taking situation. Those actions are not predicated based upon the actions of the officers as much as they are the actions of the individuals that they confront. And when you confront a situation like this, where we're not talking minutes, we're not talking weeks, we're talking seconds, those officers have to make that split-second decision for their safety, for the safety of the community, and for the safety of everybody involved.
What does the investigation look like into the officers' actions while they're on leave?
Yeah, and it is still ongoing. Again, there's a number of steps that have to take place. They have to actually go through the extensive interview period. They have to, again, look at the body-worn video that they had, look at the circumstances, go through the investigation. Again, there's multiple entities involved, the district attorney's office is involved. So there's a lot of different components related to this. And then again, it's going to be the determination after an extensive use of force review board, where their actions are going to be reviewed. Were they within policy and procedure? Were they correct or were they incorrect? And again, is there any criminal related to this? And I mean, as far as crimes, did the officers act in a criminal manner? Did they deviate from policy procedure? Did they deviate from Colorado state law and state statute? All of those things are going to have to be reviewed and be determined.
So
the person that was involved, were they arrested, and what were the charges of so?
The victim? Yeah, the victim was not arrested. Again, we determined through an interview with him exactly what occurred that we know from his perspective. And again, I think it's important to kind of talk about that perspective because this individual, he made contact with our suspect, and after a very brief period of time, it became evident that there was going to be bad behavior. And that bad behavior was basically a robbery. And that robbery related to trying to get our victim's car keys. When our victim fought about it, again, they rolled out on the streets for almost 4 or 5 minutes. And then it escalated to the point where our suspect took a stone and a rock and ended up hitting our victim on the head. And then after they both were expent, he went across the street and continued to elevate and escalate this situation by removing this item you see over here to the right, or the left, I'm sorry.
Did the victim say anything about why he didn't call police while it was happening, or why he was engaging back?
He actually did call the police. He was one of the callers too. We had the victim call, and then we also had independents from different areas throughout this community also call.
Chief, are we calling it a carjacking? I mean, as the events unfold, or?
The elements are there. It really is, but again, robbery, carjacking, whatever terminology you want to use, it was definitely a fight over a vehicle.
And on Thursday, I believe you made a reference to 2 officers. One of the 2 is the one that fired the shots. Do we know how many people fired?
Yeah, at this time, nothing has changed since our conversation out in the field. It was actually one officer who fired 2 rounds.
Okay.
The day that we were there, we conducted a lot of interviews and, people showed their concerns for what was happening. What would you say to them and kind of like to prevent further situations like this to happen again?
Well, what I would say is, thank goodness that we have officers that are willing to drive up on this and stop it. I don't know how long this activity has been occurring. I don't know what the background right now of this individual is, but I know that there wasn't anything good about it. And luckily it was a tactical replica, but I would hate to see if he ever got his hands on a real gun, what would occur. And again, I don't know what he's doing. I don't know what the indications were. I don't know why he felt the need to continue on and escalate that once the officers arrived. I don't know. But what I do know is that those officers responded to a very, very fluid, a very, very dangerous situation. And they took the action that at that time, in their perception, in their mind, was the only due course that they could take. And what I hope on this, again, we'll continue to investigate this individual. We'll continue to review who he is, what he is, why he is. But when you do look at things on intervention and prevention, you have to ask the story, well, what happened? What caused this individual to get to this place? What type of services could have prevented that? What type of family outreach could have prevented that? And I don't know. I haven't spoke to the family. I haven't talked with them. What have they experienced? What is the people, his friends, the people around him, what have they experienced? This isn't unfortunately, it became a situation strictly for law enforcement to contend and deal with. But these actions are something that go far beyond. These are actions that a community should be involved in, that family should be involved in, that people should say, hey, I have an individual and he has some issues. He has some problems, and we need to get him medical care. We need to get him mental health care, if that's the case. And I don't know if that's the case. I don't know what drove this person to that. I don't have that opportunity right now. But what I know is there's a lot of dynamics that would cause somebody to get in this situation with officers, and then to continue not only get in the situation, but then not to de-escalate from that situation, and actually escalate the situation when he had more than enough ample opportunity to stop his actions, and he decided not to.
Just to be clear, does that replica have any shooting ability?
And again, that's going to go, when this happened, crime scene investigation unit comes out, they took that weapon, they'll probably put it through the same things, does it have a firing component or does it not, and all that will take place. I don't have any information on that right now.
And again, Chief, we should refer to that as what?
I would refer to that as a tactical air rifle.
Got it.
During our interviews also there was people saying that there's like a group of people that are armed or just like gangs in the area. Is there any statistics that prove this?
Right now, I don't have those stats specifically for that area, and so I don't want to put out bad information. And again, I don't know any gang affiliation with him. I don't know if that's what you heard and what you talked with community members is related to this, or if this is an isolated event. I'm not sure. So again, I don't want to put that out right now because I don't know.
Chief, there's several residents that are living in the vehicles that were evicted from that apartment complex that's next to where the shooting was. Do you have any idea if the victim or the suspect were tied to that apartment?
What we got initially, and again, this is still ongoing, we think that in this apartment complex is a possible girlfriend of our suspect. And from what we know from initial conversations with her is that she was intimidated, she was afraid of his actions and his behavior, and she didn't let him into that apartment. And from what we think, the van that was out here, he was actually living in that van. And so again, those are some dynamics that I think you really have to question. What exactly was unfolding? What opportunities did this individual have? what other activities had he been involved with in relation to that. Any other questions? The one thing I want to let you know also, again, we have not released any body-worn video on this yet. There is a statute in a state law that says we have to have the family review it first within a 72-hour period. So once that is done, once we work with the family, allow them to see everything that we have, we will be releasing more detailed and more specific information. But again, in the truest form of transparency, in the truest form of trying to make sure we bring clarity to a very unfortunate and a very unclear situation, I really wanted to stand up here today and at least provide you with the information that we did have and what relates specifically to something that is going to be of interest to the community, interest to you, and interest to basically everybody who has heard anything about this. Any other questions at all? Please, anything? Thank you again very much for being here, and I appreciate the fact that you can pass this on. Thank you very much.